How's it going, my bakers? Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I have another great addition to the pastry, cakes and sweet bakes playlist. So let's go to the kitchen, check it out. Once again, I have to thank my most prolific baking buddy, Lan, for this recipe. But I have to be honest, when I first saw it on paper, it didn't look very impressive. But all that changed when I tried it for the first time. This is one awesome treat. Chewy, gooey, nutty goodness. And it's extremely easy to make. So let me show you how it's done, starting with the ingredients. It's made up of 2 layers. The base is a dough made with white flour, butter, brown sugar, chopped pecans or any nuts that you like, and some cinnamon. This is optional. This was my addition to the recipe. Right, moving on to the second layer. It contains brown sugar, an egg, flour, baking powder, salt, and some vanilla paste or some vanilla essence. Paste would be better. I could not find any, so I'm using essence. It works. As for the equipment, we'll need a bowl, scales, a whisk. A jug will really come in handy for pouring the topping onto the base, but if you don't have a jug, you could just spoon it on. And last but not least, we'll need a tray for baking. I'm using my Lloyd's Pans pizza pan. It measures at around 21 centimeters or 8.5 inches long, 16 centimeters or 6.5 inches wide, and about 5 centimeters or 2 inches deep. You can find this exact pizza pan in my Amazon shop, link down below if you're interested, but it's certainly not necessary. You can bake this in any deep tray. If yours is larger, adjust the ingredients in the recipe. To stop this treat from sticking, we must line the baking tray with some non-stick baking paper. And with all that out of the way, let's begin. First things first, preheat the oven to 150 degrees Celsius, fan off. And that is just above 300 degrees Fahrenheit. This is quite a low and slow bake. Okay, let's start by making the base. In a large bowl, combine the flour, the brown sugar and the cinnamon. Give it all a good mix. Brown sugar can be quite lumpy. We must get rid of those lumps, so break them up until the mix is nice and even. A food processor would work really well here. If you have one, use it. Next up, add the cold butter pieces. Coat them in flour and then break them up into smaller pieces. This dough is not going to be very crumbly. The butter to flour ratio is too high for that. Again, you could just use a food processor for this step also. Keep breaking up the butter and mixing it in until it turns into a nice cohesive dough. And this is what it should look like once it's done. Next up, grab the tray and crumble the dough evenly all over it. After crumbling it up, use your hand to press it into shape. Try to make it into a nice evenly thin layer and make sure it reaches all the sides and corners. Next, grab the chopped nuts and sprinkle them evenly all over the base. And finally, press them into the dough using your hands. You want to fuse the chopped nuts with the dough. Once you're done, pick up the tray and shake it a little bit. If there are any loose bits of nuts floating around, you'll know you need to press them a little bit more. And that's it, the base is ready for the oven. So let's pop it in there. The initial bake will take around 20 minutes. All we want to do at this point is to half bake the base and toast the nuts slightly. Start preparing the topping a couple of minutes before the timer goes off. To make it, in a large bowl, combine the sugar, the salt, the baking powder and the flour. Once again, we need to mix this all up and make sure that there are no lumps in the sugar. And if you have a food processor, use it for this step too. If you do it by hand, it'll take a couple of minutes. Okay, once you're happy with the mix, add the vanilla and the egg. And then whisk the mix until it's nice and smooth. After whisking, transfer the mix to a jug, if you have one. If you don't have a jug, you can just spoon the mix onto the base. Or just pour it slowly from the bowl. Okay, by now, the base should be ready. So let's get it out of the oven and top it with the second layer. This recipe is so easy and simple, it's unreal. And the result will be absolutely amazing. I have already tried making this with walnuts and they work really well here too. Any nuts will work in this recipe. After pouring on the topping, use a spatula to spread it out to ensure that it reaches all the sides and corners. Now let's get this thing back into the oven for another 30 minutes of baking. It does take a while to bake this. We don't want to go with a high temperature here because it would dry out and even burn. So low and slow is the way to go. And anyway, it's not like waiting takes any effort, and we will need to wait for a little bit longer, because this needs to cool down for around a couple of hours before we can cut it. I'll show you in a minute what happens when you're impatient like I am. I did not wait for 2 hours, I waited only for 1 hour, and while it had cooled down, it had set, it was pretty easy to take it out of the tray. When it came to slicing it, I didn't get the best results. As you can see, I didn't get the cleanest cuts here. This is the third time I'm making this. Both previous times I cooled it down properly and that resulted in perfectly sharp lines. Of course it did not taste any different in the end, but if you want that perfect look, let it cool down completely. That is how you make pecan bars. I hope you try them, and if you do, I'm pretty sure that you will love them. So what do you think this nutty slice? Let me know down in the comments. You want to see more videos like this one? Click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.